Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Figuring Things Out podcast with me, Will Brown. This series is all about practice, curating a practice for the long term, evolving it to make it really suit who you are. And today's guest has done exactly that. Isa is an amazing physical practitioner and a body worker. She has come full circle, finding her passion through her physicality, and we dive into all sorts in this conversation, ranging from how to massage your partner, how to look good for your partner, what true meaning really means in a physical practice, all the way from her history, from elite volleyball training, all the way through to what she does now, which is incredible one-arm handstands. She's one of the only females I've ever seen to do a handstand push-up in the world. And she does this all with a smile on her face and as a hobbyist, someone who does this for the joy of pushing themselves. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you will too. Here we go with Isa from One Soma. What I really like is to go a bit into the background of you and kind of who you are and what's going on. And I think what's nice is that obviously we met 3 years ago now, and you came to the retreat and we gave people just a lovely, like, relaxing evening and all these recovery tools, which I think are really valuable. But I think you've kind of drove on in such a far distance away from that I want to kind of dig in and understand. You're absolutely jacked right now. You have the one-arm handstand. I don't even think you were training the one-arm handstand when we met last time. Is that correct?
I think I was just beginning to tiptoe into the project. Like, I don't think I could, hold it freestanding. But it's definitely the one-arm handstand's definitely come a long way. Also, a lot over the last 2 years, especially, we've done a little bit more hypertrophy training. I live in Venice near Gold's Gym, so
I can see. Yeah.
So I've definitely put on quite a few pounds of muscle. Yeah.
You are wham, as we call it. I props to you as well. I think you're one of the only females I've ever seen do a really clean handstand push-up.
Yeah, that is a project that when I first started getting interested in it, one of the coaches I was working with was like, just so you know, I've not seen a lot of ladies do this. And I don't know, my brain works like, okay, cool. Now I want it even more.
Yeah.
But I mean, just like with any of these projects, as I'm sure you know, they just take so much focus and discipline. And the handstand push-ups and drills forward is like one of the only pushing umbrella of drills that I've been doing over the last couple of years. And now we can handstand push up.
Amazing, dude. That's so cool.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that kind of gender difference? Do you understand it? Why is it that women on average don't complete that project?
I do think in general, some women are kind of scared to put on muscle. Of course, there's so many women in the movement and fitness space who are like jacked and we want muscle. And to them, what I'm saying is like, no, that's not a thing. But I do think generally speaking, there are women that are scared of size. I've always find it so funny when I'm talking to a girl or a client or a friend. They're like, oh, I want to, get stronger, but I don't want to put on size. I'm like, do you know how hard it is to put on size? Like, it doesn't happen by accident. But I do think generally maybe females want to be like more petite, and we think that these kind of like full-blown strength projects are a more masculine thing. This is gonna sound very egoic. I hope it doesn't sound bad, but like I like showing up at a gym and like kind of coming out on top of like some of the guys, like dudes, like super buff dudes bench pressing like whatever 300 pounds. You're like, whoa, like how do you do that?
Yeah.
How can I learn that? Like, it's cool to, I don't know. I feel like people are waking up to the fact that like women can be just as strong, not like absolute strength, right? I think biologically like men are generally stronger, though I don't see many dudes doing handstand push-ups. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm joking. But
You're not kidding.
yeah, kidding. But yeah.
What's your opinion on the relationship between size or muscle mass and body weight strength? Because there's a bit of a complicated relationship there, I feel.
It is a very complicated relationship. So it's funny because I have a lot of body weight projects that I'm working on. One-arm handstands, kind of body weight, body balance, handstand push-ups, pull-ups, even like, croc balancing things. I also have had a goal over the last couple years of like growing my glutes and growing my legs. And it's funny because if you see the best hand balancers in the world and people, like dancers or acrobatics, they're typically very like most of them are like this big and they don't have a
Mm,
lot of um muscle mass. And so I think that my hypertrophy goals in some ways kind of do go against the kind of more nimble body weight stuff. But at least for me, and I'm sure we'll get into lots about training in general, but I pretty early on realized like I don't want to have to stick to like one lane. Like I don't want to
mm,
ignore growing muscle in ways that I want to if that means it's going to compromise my body weight stuff. So
mm,
I like being like a generalist, right? We all know this term, a generalist in that way, but I do think that just the more muscle mass you have on your body, the harder the body weight goals are gonna
mm,
be. I mean, and in the most extreme cases, like I mentioned, I train at Gold's Gym, you see like these bodybuilder huge dudes, like 300 pounds and they're low body fat percentage and they're all muscle, but they can't reach their arm overhead or they could never hang from a bar. And even like
mm.
squatting low down to the ground is, that's a very extreme case of muscle mass making body weight stuff difficult. But yeah, I'm not really interested in that kind of muscle mass because
Yeah.
it gets in the way of things.
I think that's the problematic perspective that became the norm, right? It's like you see someone who's muscular and you think
Mm.
bodybuilder, and then you see what a bodybuilder is capable of in relation to body weight strength, and it's not that interesting. But that's, like, as you say, it's such an extreme.
Yeah.
Actually, I feel like muscle mass is a really important part of strength training and body weight strength, but
Mm.
you have to understand this kind of strength to weight relationship.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a tipping point. For me, I've always been someone that likes to, I think as you are, like that likes to be a certain mass, and that
Certain
makes me always
jackness,
feel, yeah, right, like a certain
wholeness.
whamness. Yeah. And I wonder for you, is it also playing into your emotions or your personality?
uh my physical appearance or training or what
Your
exactly?
physicality? 'Cause for me, it's very
The
intertwined.
physical.
Whenever
Mm.
training's going well
Yeah.
and I'm feeling strong in my training, I have like an extra 10% like confidence, vibe, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, I try and be very careful to not let like my ego in the way of things, but I will be honest, I have noticed that I almost feel like people upon meeting me treat me a little bit differently after I've put on this kind of muscle mass. Like I have always
Mm,
been fairly athletic. Like I, see photos of myself in 7th and 8th grade. And like I had abs and a six pack. Like me and my twin sister have really good genetics, but really over the last couple years, maybe it was being around Gold's Gym. Maybe it's a few different other reasons, but I was just like, I really want to put on muscle mass. And personality wise, this isn't exactly personality, but the way people treat me, people all the time are like, "What do you do? Like, are you a bodybuilder? Do you like
mm,
do athletic modeling?" And like, um, I guess it has been like a confidence boost. I don't like letting my ego like, grab onto that too much, but I do think for me, it's empowering to walk into a room and know that I look strong. And, just
mm,
an entrepreneur, wellness influencer who has a very large following. We talked at the gym one time and she was like, anyone who has a very strong physique, it indicates that a person really knows how to work hard. And
mm,
it meant a lot. Like, I don't know, sometimes online there's so many flashy displays of like muscles and jackness, but there's so much of a psychology behind being able to build your body in the way that you want to, not from bodybuilding at all, but like it's empowering when you know that you have control over your flesh. I know that sounds
mm,
weird. But
definitely.
I mean, also to your point of, when training is going well, how it changes your emotional state and how it gives you that extra 10%. Like, I remember the first day that I unlocked the handstand push-up, and it's just, it's crazy to have those feelings when you've been envisioning this skill and
Mm,
you're imagining yourself doing it, to all of a sudden you did it and you see yourself on video and you're like, is that me? And
it was you.
mm, yeah, it was me. Yeah. And yeah, that's always empowering. And I think something that kind of goes to my mind sometimes is like these physical practices are very tangible and real, but sometimes, in my head I feel like these other goals in my life, like with my business and within myself, that it's so difficult. But sometimes when you accomplish that physical task, it kind of reminds you, like, these other goals in your life that are more like esoteric and hard to grab onto in this physical way, like you can accomplish them in that same way.
Hmm,
That was a lot of different directions I took that answer. But
great.
yeah.
Before we dive into one summer in the business, I want to go a bit more into your history. So you mentioned your twin sister.
Yes.
What were you guys like growing up with regards to athletics?
Yeah, so we both ran cross country in 6th and 7th grade. Paul Revere Middle School cross country champion
Let's
here.
go. Was there like intense competition between you two?
No, no, no. It was, I mean, maybe there's a little bit of competition between us. I think we always did push each other, and it was cool for, even though it was only a couple years of our life where we like really pushed each other in that way with running.
Hmm.
Um, and then in 8th grade, I found volleyball, and
Mm,
that sport completely shaped my life in a lot of ways. But then also shaped my relationship with fitness, volleyball. And, I started in 8th grade, but as soon as I was in 9th grade, right, I already knew that I wanted to play in college. And so
mm,
I like telling this story because, like, I've actually been wanting to make this video for social media. This is how I learned to work hard as an athlete. When I started playing volleyball in 8th grade, there was this girl on my team, let's just call her Lucy, who told everyone in 8th grade, everyone on the team, that I should have never started playing volleyball because I sucked and I would never go anywhere with it. Like, in all honesty, I was kind of a dead weight on the team. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. But when I heard that she was telling that to everyone, it just woke up this thing in me, and I was like, you know, it's not maybe the best place to derive inspiration from, but I was just like, I want to prove her wrong. And I want to make a higher team than her. And I want to get better
mm.
than her. And I want to make her feel bad that she ever said that. It's like, obviously, like, my little school brain is running right now, but you should have seen how I trained that summer between 8th and 9th grade. Like, I was on the beach, sprinting, conditioning, literally just like doing a, like, I don't know, accumulating like 500 air squats in a day, and like calf pumps, and I just got
Wow.
insane. Not that I knew anything about what I was doing, but my vertical jump improved like crazy. And I remember I went into 9th grade and we all did our tryouts, and I did make a higher team than her. And of course, and
Mm.
again, my teenage brain was like, yeah. Um, so I've always, I think, had the ability to work really hard. I think that was the first time where I was like, I have a goal here. I mean, I love volleyball in and of itself. Maybe Lucy played a role, but I've always, ever since, yeah, discovering volleyball, it taught me how to work pretty damn hard if I really want something.
That's awesome. And you played volleyball all the way
Yeah.
through high school into college?
Yes, 4 years in high school for my school's team and club, and then in college I played D3. Yeah.
How was the training? I presume getting into college, the training changed from 500 air squats every day.
Yes, definitely. So, I mean, even before that, so I first started working with a personal trainer when I was in high school. It's someone who I met through, I
Oh,
think, one of
wow.
my clubs. They hired him as a strength and conditioning coach. And so from a fairly young age, I think like 16 or 17, I got experience with very regimented training, and he
Mm,
was really a very strong kind of devotee of Charles Poliquin, and so he was getting very nitty-gritty with our training, like testing my grip strength, and, he had a very keen eye for, like, when I was recovered enough from another workout. And he was getting me up to 1 rep maxes. Like, he would put weight for, on the barbell for a deadlift, and I was like, dude, I can't do this. Like, we would get up to workouts where the whole workout is like 5 1 rep maxes. And I just remember, like, I was just so surprised by like how sore I could get and how strong I could exert. I think learning how to fully exert is
Mm.
like that learning process is really best facilitated with someone who makes you feel safe doing that. I think
Interesting.
that's
That's
yeah.
great. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. Two really good points I think we should talk about there. One, the recoverability and grip strength measure, and two, the kind of like 5 rep session of like super high intensity. One of
Yeah.
my we'll go to the latter. So one of my pet peeves is people talking about how intense their session was, and they've done like
Mm.
a super high volume like hit workout, and it like
Yeah.
drives me insane. I'm like, this is not intense. This is of course, it's a little bit subjective, but if we really want to discuss like strength training and adaptation, intensity is the proximity to one repetition maximum, right? So the
Mhm.
5 repetitions that you did in an hour or whatever it was the session took, that's an intense workout, right? It's like
Very intense, yeah.
trying so hard, as you're aware. Um, were you aware of that as a child? The difference between kind of volume intensity, what it truly means to be exerting maximal force?
I feel like when I graduated, well, kind of in college and when I graduated from college and started learning about strength training from APECO and Matt Bernstein and Liav, I started getting a better understanding for how for all the different variables of reps, sets, intensity. Back then I was kind of just like, I'm showing up and he's putting me through
Mm,
this training session. And, I've played with those variables a lot over the last couple years, and I've learned a lot more about how they affect my body. In some
mm,
ways, I am honestly a little bit relieved that I don't have these goals of like improving my vertical jump and wanting to touch a basketball rim and wanting to, run harder, jump higher,
mm,
run faster, jump higher, hit harder on the volleyball court. Because to be honest, that kind of intensity, I understand that a lot of professional athletes just need to do that to excel in
mm.
their sport. It's pretty unpleasant for me. Like it's pretty not
Yeah, yeah.
my speed.
I think
And
for
I
many people, man,
I
like
think for many people, yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
So something that I saw, I forget who it was promoting it, some moron, basically promoting 40-minute per week training. Um, it's a guy that he's obviously very strong and very talented, but it's obviously
I
not
know
what
you're
he's
talking
done
about.
to
I know you're
get there.
talking
Okay,
about. Yeah.
I get spammed with his videos being like, "Hey, is this legit? Can I seriously get a full front knee with just 40 minutes work a week?" And I watched one of the videos and I was like, "Oh no, this is really bad. It's not a method. It's just try really hard for a couple of different things in a session, like as close
Mhm.
to your 1 RM as possible, and that's
Yeah.
going to solve all of your issues." And I had to then take a step back before I like jumped into the public domain and just like shouted a lot at it, because I did a bit of like a poll on my Instagram stories and we discussed a few things with a few people, and some people had some good points of like, it's important to acknowledge that some people in the realm of high intensity training, like HIIT training, need to understand that actually it's not high intensity, but it's high volume that they're doing. And so this guy's perspective is
Mm.
offering like a very simple method to learn how to exert themselves harder, which I think as like it's a valid perspective. It's also a valid perspective that's simple, like just 40 minutes a week isn't not a lot, so people have a low barrier to entry, so they might try it. And anything that gets someone moving, I think, is a positive, at least to begin with. And then it goes downhill from there, in my opinion, of like all the problems. I
For sure.
wonder, when you were doing the super high intensity like 5 rep sessions, what kinds of negatives were you experiencing? I feel like there's quite a lot of like psychological demand, like neurological issues, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, with something like that with training of that intensity, so much of your recovery is just your nervous system,
Mm,
right? We think about, oh, I need to pound the protein and the creatine or whatever to like recover the muscle tissue, but your nervous system is almost one of like the main things that gets hit in that. And it's about like that kind of training is really learning about how to recruit everything more fully, right,
mm,
than necessarily hypertrophy. Obviously, it's going to put size on you, But I just remember after those training sessions and for days after, I would feel like I don't know, like I had to take a nap or like I just like didn't want to do anything. And this is kind of something related to more the specific exercises that we were doing, but
Mm,
my trainer was having me do Romanian deadlifts. And actually, over the years have realized that deadlifts, barbell deadlifting is not for me. I know that a lot of trainers would be like, you just don't have good form. You need to have form PRs instead of weight PRs, and you need to workshop your form. And it's just one of those things where over the years, I'm like, dude, there's so many other ways to hit those muscle groups. And almost every time I barbell deadlift, it hits my back in a very, very unpleasant way. Part of the reason that
mm,
I love bodywork and helping people out of pain is because I have had debilitating pains of my own, a lot of which have been put on through those kinds of deadlift movements.
mm.
And honestly, my lower back is kind of a problem child that I need to always be giving a little extra TLC. If not, it kind of seizes up and it's uncomfortable in the morning. And if I'm on top of it and I'm not doing exercises that aggravate it, it's totally fine.
Awesome.
But yeah, yeah,
So you basically found alternative routes into training muscle groups that would otherwise be trained with the deadlift.
yeah, yeah.
Can you go into some detail about like, what kinds of things are helping you?
Yeah, and so, when I say I'm not saying that, like, the exercises that I do in place of a deadlift are exact replicas, like, that they hit all the same muscle groups, like, I understand that there's some variance,
Mm,
but,
mm,
uh, one exercise I really like for glutes is just a good old hip thrust. I've become, like, very picky with my hip thrust setup, and there's not most gyms don't have a great setup. Like, it's very
mm,
uncomfortable to try and, like, get under the barbell. The plates aren't high enough, but, a couple of the gyms that I go to have a really nice, setup where you just kind of rack them on a barbell that, like, then you put a belt on and you
mm.
do it pretty easily. I really liked hip thrusts. I really like the way that it has to kind of it makes you engage your core and your pelvic tilt as well.
Yeah.
Um I really again, these are not very deadlifty, but I really like Bulgarian split squats. Like, I like
Mhm.
movements where you are again, not that the deadlift doesn't do this, but I like movements where you kind of have to, like, really coordinate everything. I think with the Bulgarian split squats, like, there's this extra, variable of balance, which is a really nice one that I do
Yeah,
for
yeah.
legs. I do something called a reverse hack squat on the right. I sound like such a bodybuilder. Oh my god, the Ido Portal people would kill me.
No
But, like,
way.
there's a
Get
reverse
after
hack
it.
squat.
I'm here
Yeah,
for it.
yeah, there's a reverse we can change, we're allowed to change. Um, yeah, reverse hack squat's a really awesome machine, that I just feel like it allows everything to lock in place without the spine being this huge variable. Um there's a lot I do for legs, honestly. I mean, I'm into
Yeah.
hypertrophy, but I'm also like, I've been doing again, we're like not in deadlift realm at all anymore, but like
Yeah, yeah.
sprinting and
Yeah, okay.
a lot of walking and mobility and
Mm.
yeah, I just feel like, I don't know if it's because of powerlifting or what, but like there's certain exercises that are just I don't know, people are just like, these are the things you need to do, like bench, deadlift,
Mm.
squat. Like, there's I don't know, there's so much else. There's so much else
Yeah,
we can do.
definitely. And I think you bring up a really good point on the topic of like practice, which is to find the thing that works best for your body. Like, yes,
Mm,
historically,
yeah,
deadlifts have been used a million times over and they are on the whole great. But for someone that where they don't work, then find another answer or find something that fits better with your life, your goals, like what you feel good. And I think that's great. You
for
mentioned already
sure.
that you were like trying to build the glutes. So of course, then the exercises you suggest are way better than the deadlift, most likely.
Yeah.
Um, I was also doing some hip thrust this morning. So I have a knee
Nice.
injury that I'm rehabbing. So,
Mm,
dude, I've been doing some like unilateral hip thrust, which I've never done in my life. I've never been into bodybuilding. I have hypertrophy parts of my training, like concurrently, I'm always having them in there, but I've never really had a sole bodybuilding focus.
yeah,
But of course, in the rehab phases of like my knee, I can't do too much dynamic work right now. So a lot of my lower body training is just like bodybuilding, strength work, a little bit of balance work, some proprioceptive work just kind of getting like emotional confidence back. And I guess going back to my previous point, like when an area feels strong and you build muscle, you also have a sense of confidence therein. And I really see this in my grandma, to give a quick anecdote. So she lost the ability to kind of stand up from a chair that was quite low.
Mm,
And she began to strength train on a very
mm.
simple level. She went to this class called Use It or Lose It. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So cool. She's like the oldest one in the class. She's like 84 now, 85. And she improved to such a level that now she can do, she told me the other day, they have the one challenge where they have a minute timer. They have to stand up and sit down on a chair as many times as they can in a minute. And she got 17 reps. She was like, well, I'm amazing. I could do 17 up downs. And before I couldn't even do
That's so
one.
cool.
And the
That's so cool.
confidence she has to walk around, to go upstairs at 85 compared to when she was 80 is night and day. It's insane. And it just goes to show the level of emotional involvement in stuff as simple in hypothetical speech marks as strength training or hypertrophy work, bodybuilding. It can be really powerful for people. There's two things I want to bring the conversation to. So before I forget, let's go back to the grip
Mm,
testing, because I think that's a really
yeah.
interesting point. Do you remember why you were doing grip testing?
So it's not something that I have currently done much of in my training, but I believe the rationale, and I think Huberman talks about this as well, is
Hmm.
that when you, for whatever reason, the test of your grip strength is kind of an overall indicator of how recovered your nervous system is. And so when people are getting very detailed into being able to assess how recovered they are so that they can go 100% or 90% to their next workout, um I'm pretty sure people have like the grip strength measurers, and they like will adapt their training if they're not at their baseline yet.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just an interesting
Yeah.
one for me. It's indicative of especially neurological fatigue. I think it's less relevant if you're doing like hypertrophy work, but definitely
Mm,
like when you're doing
yeah,
the strength power training you were doing, it's so important to have a measure of nervous system recovery and readiness. And it's quite
for
hard to
sure.
understand because maybe you're not sore in specific muscles,
Mm,
but maybe you might exhibit like a less range of motion in a vulnerable area, like a forward fold. Or the key one for a lot of people, a lot of tests is just grip strength. Um, yeah, I think it's a really great one. I like it a lot. I've been
yeah.
like secretly diving into like grip sport and like arm wrestling
Oh my
on
god,
the
I
down
saw
low.
that. I saw that.
So I'm like really a bit like geeky on this stuff. So it's yeah, anyway, a whole nother conversation. You mentioned
Yeah.
before that you mentioned something like what did you say? The movement culture will hate me, but everyone can change. That's
Mm,
awesome for
yeah.
me. Like I'm all about like growth, changing perspectives, like figuring things out and having different phases of your life. Can you tell me, even in the last 3 years since we met, what has changed for you?
Yeah. I mean, wow, so much has changed. I mean, I feel like when I finished with my whole volleyball career, I had a little movement hole in my heart, and I was like, what do I fill this with? And
Mm,
that's when I found APECO in Boulder. I moved there for the Rolf Institute, and I just learned this whole new movement method, and it
mm,
was amazing. Like it just expanded the capacities of my body in so many different ways. That's where I learned a handstand. That's where I learned, muscle ups and, all this stuff on the rings and mobility, locomotion, and some acrobatics. And I loved it. Met a lot of really awesome people. Love movement culture. However, I will also say that I think, you know, maybe in part because of the quality of the person who founded it and just kind of the very harsh, like rules around certain things. Again, I don't think they were ever very harsh. I just think that the, I think Ito has a very strong personality. And at least from what
mm.
I was able to witness, people were kind of like scared to step away from that. I almost feel like that trickled down to my head of like, oh, you know, you have to learn how to dribble the tennis ball and balance the stick on the finger and, get
Mm,
better at this locomotion move and that. And I don't know, over the last few years, honestly, I have found a lot of solace and just like moving how I damn please. Like I will literally be hip thrusting 300 pounds in the gym, standing on one hand, and it's just like rigid, masculine vibe. And then, I just want to take like a 5-minute dance break at home later in the day and
mm,
like do a little bit of like explorative movement and or like, I don't know, I like learning different hip hop steps. I'll just play a song for 5 minutes.
mm,
Or
mm.
my boyfriend got a ping pong table and like, I don't know, for me personally, ping pong is a million times more fun than like balancing a tennis ball with my feet. Like
Right. Yeah.
just found solace and this is kind of a long story, but I have had a history of kind of cultish uh vibes in my life and being surrounded by different groups, not necessarily with just movement, but also with spirituality, and it's a
Mm,
whole other story. But I have had a tendency to pigeonhole myself into, I don't know, someone's dogma or someone's ideology. And yeah, I've just found a lot of peace and being like, I'm just gonna move how I want. Like even wanting to grow my glutes. When I
mm.
first had this little desire of like, yeah, I want to be in like my dump truck era. I
Yeah.
was like, oh man, the movement people would think this is so stupid or I don't know,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
and I'm just like, dude, I don't care. I can dance and play ping pong and grow my glutes and stand on one hand, and it's like
Mm,
it's all fun at the end of the day. I think,
yeah.
and
And
I'm
it's all
going
for
on such a
you, which is
and
the
it's all
key
for
point.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's all for me, and, like, and not when I say this term, like, building my body, I'm not referring to bodybuilding, but, like, I am curious in shaping and designing a body that's just this, like, fun little home that I can do so many wonderful
Mm,
things from, and I think I was listening, who was it? Maybe Kelly Starrett. I don't know if you know
mm,
him. He's a very, very interesting voice that I've just been eating up recently, his books and podcasts, and he just made a really interesting point that, you know, so much of movement and fitness these days has completely lost the element of play. And we think of it as this
mm.
job and how can, I put X number of pounds of muscle on me and da da da. Like I understand that there's a time and place for that, but I think it's very important to remember the playful, fun elements of what we do. And like, instead of just trying to get 10,000 steps, like learn a hip hop move and practice it for 10 minutes. I guarantee you'll get
Gonna
just
get
as many.
10,000 steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so fun.
I think that's where the culture on average kind of doesn't see the wood for the trees. Like they get confused in the value, I feel, of the
Mm,
original philosophy.
yeah.
And this philosophy very much was about like a broad spectrum of experience and empowering the individual to open themselves up to new experiences and see new things. And as you say, like build themselves up to life experience, to see more things, experience more things on not only like an emotional level, but really on a physical level. And then it
Mm,
became a bit like a bag of tricks. Like everyone in the culture has to have the biggest bag of tricks possible, and
yeah.
it's kind of you then have to maintain it all and like drag this bag of tricks around with you like this big heavy sack, and it just became this kind of circus almost. And I really feel like for me, similar to you, I've arm wrestling's this guilty pleasure of like getting a dump
Yeah.
truck. It's like, you know what? I don't know why. It's in my whole life since I was a kid. I've always been amazed. Like I used to arm wrestle my dad as like an 8-year-old, and I would always be like, "Wow, that would be the coolest thing to beat him." And it's always been this thing, like the whole way through university, school. Like I was always the one that wanted to arm wrestle, and it's just come back with such a passion. It's such a good
I love that.
feeling to be like, I don't care if it's not complex on the level of uh, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but then, as with everything, at least in my experience, something so simple can still have such complexity. And the more I do it, the more I'm like, oh my God, this is a whole world. You can see why people get sucked up.
I
And
bet.
bodybuilding's the same. Like you have so much nuance and depth if you choose to seek it. It doesn't have to be um, an empty pursuit. And maybe that's where people go wrong. They enter avenues with a sense of, oh, I have to do this, rather than I wonder what if. And maybe that's
Mm,
also where the play that you suggest comes in.
yeah. I mean, look, I understand the need. Like, I'm not hating on people who go to the gym begrudgingly every day. I think that it's helpful to have had experiences like playing volleyball in high school and college where I was able to learn that there's so much relief and so much value in going through something physically difficult.
Mm,
And sometimes when you're at the very beginning of the journey, I have a lot of clients who are trying to get more fit. I have a lot of clients who have injuries getting in the way of them going full force in their fitness journey. And I talk to a lot of them about kind of the psychology, what's holding them back from really going into pursuing fitness. And I mean, it's funny to say this as someone who's just like so comfortable with the unpleasant feelings that come with the pushing yourself in the gym. But some
mm,
people are just scared of that initial discomfort. They don't want to feel sore. Like I had this one client where I was just encouraging her to work with this personal trainer. She finally works with the personal trainer. And then I was like, "Oh, how was it?" She loved the first few sessions, and then she was like, "Oh, I just get too sore." And I was
mm,
like, that's kind of the point also, I mean, I could say so much about that, but that's maybe one aspect of people of what keeps people from the beginning is that they don't want the discomfort, which look,
mm,
trust me, I understand. Do I have those issues in the gym and with my physical practices? No, but I have those issues with other parts of my life for sure.
yeah, I bet.
Um,
Can you maybe go into a bit more into that of like how, when you're working with people, do you communicate around like physical adaptation, soreness, and their like own like limiting beliefs, their like limiting
mm,
desires to enter a place of, as you said, it discomfort or effort?
yeah, I mean, I will acknowledge that I'm not a personal trainer at this point in my life. I feel
Mm,
like a dream that's always been on the back burner for me is to enter more into movement coaching just because I feel like I've
mm,
learned so much about it through bodywork and my own personal practice of it obviously. But I will start by saying I'm not a seasoned movement coach. I've done movement sessions with people, but just want to acknowledge
mm,
that. Um but yeah, I mean, I think there's so many different kinds of limiting beliefs, I think, when it comes to fitness. Like, I remember this one girl came up to me at a grocery store and she was like, "Dude, you're you're jacked. What do you do? I've always wanted to go to the gym. I can never get consistent." And I was like, "Well, why don't you think you're consistent?" And the number one reason that she said, which I thought was super interesting, is that she was concerned with people judging her. And
mm,
I kind of cut her off. I was like, "Look, I'm sorry to cut you off. I acknowledge it's a valid feeling. Also, you really need to understand that, like, no one's judging you at the gym. First of all, if they are, you shouldn't even give a damn about them because, like, screw that kind of person.
mm.
But no one's paying attention to you. Like, they're responding to texts and listening to Huberman and God knows what, like texting their boss.
Looking
Like,
at
they're
themselves
not,
in the mirror.
yeah, looking at themselves in the mirror. They're not concerned with you. And anyone who's fit would never judge someone else learning how to be fit. Like, I understand that when you're new to the gym and maybe if you want to do a more like hypertrophy machine focused training session, you look at some of those machines and they look like quadratic equations and you're like, where do I put what? Like what?
Dude,
And
I
so
feel you. I
maybe
go through
people,
that process so much, even now, after 20 years of training. I see a machine, I'm like, what is that?
yeah.
I had this really funny experience last month. I was in the gym and I was trying to do quad extension, but I did
Mm,
it completely wrong. And this lady comes over to me and she's like, "Do you want some help? You're using it completely wrong." And I was
so
like,
funny.
"Oh, this is great." Sorry to
No,
cut you off. Yeah.
but with another thing that I told this lady, right? And it happens to even experienced people. You walk into the gym and you use the machine wrong. It happened to my uncle, right? Right.
Mm,
He was like 70 years old. Like, he like used the machine wrong. I thought it was so funny. But also, like, there's ways to combat the unfamiliar to combat the unfamiliarity of walking into a gym. Like, if people are serious about training and they don't want to invest in a personal trainer, dude, you know how much fitness content is on the internet? Like, someone could literally, for example, complete noob at the gym could just do a deep dive into someone like Jeff Nippard, who has so many exercise planned out for people already. Like, this is your leg day, you know?
Mm,
And just follow that and be a little bit detailed in trying to understand what is he doing with his body, like, and eventually you figure it out.
mm,
So, and yeah, I mean, this is another aspect of the psychology that maybe sometimes people almost feel like they're not worthy of the body that they want.
mm.
Um, this is kind of a left field tangent, but I often talk about this with my with my boyfriend, and sometimes I'm like, I feel like I shouldn't say this because I feel like people would hate on me for saying this, but I met my boyfriend 2 years ago, and very early on into our relationship, we both saw like, oh, this is my person. Like, we are literally
Mm,
within a week of meeting, we basically committed to be with each other for the long haul. And I feel like being with him improved my sense of worthiness, like in a way that I never even could have imagined. And, you know, I was in maybe some not the healthiest of relationships before. And then being in this relationship, I've learned that I've often heard people say, like, someone else can only love you as much as you love yourself. And after being in this relationship, I actually think that's not true. I think that when you feel that kind of like very wholesome, deep love from someone else, you can learn to feel that from yourself. And I
mm.
feel like that enhanced sense of worthiness that's come from being in him, like, it's just affected my life in so many ways. And I was like, yeah, and this is, I think, the part that maybe especially some women would get mad at me for, but like, I like want to really look good for him. And I mean, for
Mm,
myself too, but like, I really want to look good for him. And like, if he's my partner for life, like, like I want to, you know, look as great as I can for him and be as healthy as I can for him.
yeah,
So that's kind of like a interesting psychology element that is kind of tangentially related, but um,
completely
yeah.
related. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wonder, first of all, love it. It resonates so much. I have the very similar perspective from my side as well. Like, very
Mm,
similar. I think having a partner that really loves you gives you like a mirror almost. And you're like,
mm.
oh, this like random person really loves me? Huh. Maybe I am lovable. And therefore,
Yeah.
da, 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 da. I wonder, from the perspective of what you said, like women won't like you saying that.
Mm.
Why do you think some women would have that distaste for what you said?
Because and I understand the reasons why people would have issues with it. Like this concept of the male gaze and, the female body kind of being shaped over, many years to accommodate what a man wants to see. Like, I
Mm,
understand how there are toxic elements to it, but I think it's a very different situation where you are in a very, very, very loving, healthy relationship and you truly just want to be the best version of yourself for this person.
mm,
And I don't know, like, there's this saying, like, I don't, I'm a strong, independent woman. I don't need no man. This is a whole other conversation. And my boyfriend and I talk extensively about relationship, couples psychology, and philosophy. But I do think, in general, people in this modern world are very comfortable being super independent and not leaning on people. And I don't know. I think that we are wired to need people and to be able to
mm,
depend on people and be a role in someone else's life that they depend on. And like, do I want to look good for myself and feel good for myself? Absolutely. But I would be lying if I said that I didn't experience this whole extra wave of motivation to do that when I met my now boyfriend.
mm.
Um, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think
I
that's a
mean,
good point.
I could be wrong. Maybe some women would totally agree with me, and I would also hope, that it goes both ways. It's not that it's just one
Definitely.
way, like, I need to be this trophy wife for my man, like, I also know that he also wants to be the best version of himself for me, and I don't think that this is something that needs to be exclusively like a female's ambition, like, a
Definitely.
man
Definitely.
we should all want to be, like, the best version of ourselves for someone else, and sometimes
Mm,
it's ironic, it's hard to wanna change for just ourselves, but when there's that extra reason, whether it's like someone or something, it's easy to grab onto motivation however it comes is all I'm saying.
definitely. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think motivation graduates from external to internal. So it goes from this kind of external thing you're chasing, and then
Yeah.
maybe over time becomes this kind of intrinsic habitual thing. Like for you right now, maybe it was like an external driver, like to get jacked, and now it's like part of you, and it's an intrinsic kind of like, it is what you do in your day-to-day life. It's not something that you have to do, which
Yeah.
is a really interesting like slide. Um, it's definitely for me a perspective that resonates, and it's something that I feel is definitely both ways. It has some nuance, I think, in the sense of if someone has a partner demanding you look or do
Mm,
things a certain way, that's like a really negative, like toxic connotation. But if it's
for
something that's
sure.
coming from you, like I want to be my best self, and it's coming from a sense of like I'm for sure like that. Like I want to put my best self forward. So of course, that is also in relation to the person in my relationship.
Totally. And no, you're right that it's very nuanced. And I had a client recently who broke up with her boyfriend, and one of the reasons was that her boyfriend was always making comments about her body, like, "Oh, you're not as thin as you used to be," or like, "Oh, look at that girl. Like, you don't like if you lifted weights, like you could look like her." And, in a situation like that, how is that going to be at all motivating? Like my
Mm,
boyfriend literally like he from the first day we met, he was like, "You're like, you're the prettiest girl in the world." Like, he's like, "You're," like, loved my I mean, I don't wanna make it seem like we just have, like, a physical attraction, like, our love runs very deep, but, like, I knew he already, like, appreciated how I looked, and, like, from that point of already loving me from where I was at,
mm.
that was the motivation to, like, really wanna be the best version for him, but not from him being like, "Hey, I think you should work on your glutes a little
Yeah,
bit."
yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
Let's go, speaking of working with glutes, let's go to Rolfing. Let's go to your body work,
Yeah.
and kind of
Yeah.
slide away from the tricky conversations.
Yes.
How has Rolfing made you see your physical practice differently?
Mm. So what I see a lot of as a body worker slash rolfer is just a myriad of aches and pains and tensions. And look, there are people who come in as a professional athlete. I've worked with NFL players, WWE competitors, Team USA volleyball players. These people have aches and pains and injuries from almost doing too much, right? They're really pushing their body to the
Mm,
limit. However, the vast majority of clients that I see in my private practice struggle with issues that I believe come from our sedentary existence and from literally being in this position that we've been sitting here now for almost an hour, where our hip flexors are shortened, our shoulders are rolled forward, our neck is out like this,
let's do a
and
quick stretch.
yeah, quick little stretch. But I do think that the vast majority of aches and pains and tensions that I see today are from sedentary life and things forgetting how to
Mm,
move the way that they should. And so I think one huge way that has informed my physical practice is looking at movement again, not as just this thing of like talking so much about glutes, not just about growing the glutes, handstand push up, but really I movement as a tool to restore what humans have been doing for literally millions of years. And a lot of my movement and mobility is I feel like it's oriented towards, okay, what positions are we in all day when we're hunched over our phones at our computers? And how can we restore the optimal range? So I do some hip opening every single day, whether
mm,
that's just like a big, like, free form lunge on the ground. I stretch my neck like a crazy
mm,
person because my neck is kind of a problem child and it has become more
I
of one
feel you.
after all day, like working on people on the table.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, I think our bodies would feel completely different if, like, in place of one of our typical training sessions, we turned it into like a self therapy session.
mm,
And maybe I'm imposing, like, I've learned so much about my body and how to work with my aches and pains. Like, whenever I feel a little ache or pain tickling me, I work on it myself and not through body work. Sometimes I self massage it. I'll do a little mobility drill. I'll have my boyfriend work on me. Um, but I'm on it. And I've
Mm,
definitely like learned this vocabulary of movement and mobility with myself that I know how to kind of get my injuries before they come. Like I did sprints yesterday on the treadmill. I'm feeling some kind of weirdness in my knee and hip flexor. And so today I'm gonna work on that. And I feel
mm,
like the reason aches and pains and tensions become chronic is because we feel these little tickles or like whispers of discomfort and we don't do anything about them when they're tiny. And so they keep growing into these more chronic issues to now all of a
gotcha.
sudden you can't do
Mm,
the thing that you love to do.
mm,
And I don't think people realize like, you know, I almost feel like I have the one Soma character and then I have this other like movement based like character and voice, whereas as a businesswoman who wants clients, like I'll work on anyone who comes to my table. However, I do see a lot of people who come in to me for a session and I'm like, I know this isn't my offering currently, but like I feel like this movement thing would almost be a better investment of your time and money than just a session with me.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
really ranted a lot on that question, but
I've experienced your sessions a couple of times, one on the retreat and then obviously did your workshop in London. And I
mm,
feel like one of the great takeaways was how fond of like partner based like body work. And I mean
mm,
it like literally like your friends or your loved ones, getting people to kind of really engage with not just like hugging or like laying on the sofa with your leg over them, but like genuinely giving your partner some time to do some body work and get some value from that. And I feel like
yeah.
that's a really rare and really interesting topic to kind of move through, especially looking at sustainable practice. Like if you're
Mm,
pushing your body, like you're working your body, or you're not, and you're lacking physicality, even a sense of like uh, proprioceptively getting a sense of what it feels like to have pressure on your lower back, for example. What does it feel to release that
mm.
pressure? And can you talk a
Yeah.
bit about the value of body work, first of all?
The value of bodywork, the
Mm.
partner or just like bodywork in general?
I think bodywork in general, and then I would like to talk
Yeah.
about kind of methods that you use to get people to work as like a partnership.
Yes, for sure. So over the years, like I wish I could have a conversation with myself from 5 years ago before I ever had an understanding of bodywork because like it's just come so far, my understanding of it. I mean, I could jump off into so many different places, but number one, something that feels the most prominent is that body work is just as much about the nervous system and teaching your nervous
Mm,
system a new possibility and a way of experiencing itself. It's just as much about that as it is about reducing fascial stiffness and getting tight muscles out. Like there's this conception I think around body work that like we're these kind of lifeless pieces of meat and you know good elbow or a sturdy thumb like you can mash that muscle into like reducing stiffness. And from my own research over the years as well as you know doing literally like like well over 1,000 sessions at this point, I mean thousands of sessions at this point, like our aches and pains and the way that our brain interprets pain is such a nuanced process. And sometimes the way that we feel pain is not actually equivalent to the level of tissue damage that we experience. And so, I mean,
mm,
this is a topic that I've spent so much time researching just because, like, I mean, it's fascinating to me. I'm literally have my hands on people's pains all day, and people will come in with I mean, months of chronic back pain, and after one session, they're like, "How is it gone?" And from my understanding, it was believed before that the efficacy of bodywork comes from reducing the fascial stiffness, and that might be a part of it, but really what I think the bigger, contributor to pain relief is that you are basically introducing a new possibility to the nervous system. You're down regulating the way that we perceive pain. So sometimes,
mm,
right, you know, I've had surgery on the shoulder. She got cut in two, right? And so when you have a kind of either it's whether it's a surgery or an injury like that, you create these unconscious holding patterns where you stabilize everything in order to not move it to let the tissue heal.
mm,
But oftentimes this pattern can stay longer than the tissue damage. So your tissue damage is gone, but your brain is still holding this in place. And what's happening when you're holding your muscles unconsciously in one position. This fascia, like whenever you're holding muscles together, like they're in the same position without movement, that fascia is hardening and stiffening. It can compress nerves. It reduces the flow of blood and lymph to the area. And then this becomes like such a more chronic issue than just the original injury,
Mm.
which has a physical component, but usually most physical uh injuries, issues, whatever, start as a neurological component. And so bodywork is really like the art of strategically inputting a new sensation into someone's body in order to change the way that they feel their body. And
Amazing.
yeah, that's a huge rant, but I mean, I could
That's
go on,
great.
but that's kind
That's
of,
amazing. Yeah. It explains why I much prefer, on average, like a softer, more relaxed massage
mm, yeah,
or like bodywork methodology than like some kind of hard, deep tissue sports type massage. And I've had a lot in my life.
yeah.
And I
I
really
think that
feel,
there's, sorry, go on.
I was going to just say, I really feel like actually when it comes to like overall tension and learning to down regulate the nervous system,
Hmm.
for me, most of the time, just having physical touch is enough for me to relax my nervous system and therefore reduce this kind of hypertonic areas, let's say. Whereas I've had history of like quite high level sports therapists work on me and their mission is to crush the tension from my muscle and smash these areas.
Exactly.
And I come
Yeah.
away worse off than I was prior to the session. Can you speak to this?
Yeah, there's a huge misconception in bodywork that more pressure equals more benefit. Like, I was
Mm,
literally just listening to a podcast yesterday with Kelly Starrett and Huberman, and Huberman's like, "Oh, I wanted to try Rolfing. My friend told me it was like the most painful experience of his life, and so now I don't want to try it." And I hate when people have this understanding of Rolfing or bodywork because new school Rolfers, at least bodyworkers like me, I never work with more pressure than what someone is comfortable with.
mm,
Can my sessions hurt? Do I have people cursing at me occasionally on the table? Yes, but I always tell my clients, people are like, how do I know when it's too much pain? And usually what I say is if it's really difficult for you to let me be there, if it's difficult for you to breathe with that amount of pressure, then just let me reduce it. Because, right, we talked about the nervous system before and how a lot of these patterns are based in the nervous system before they actually become physical adaptations in the tissue. But if I'm putting you in this sympathetic state and your muscles are contracting back to force out my elbow or my thumb or whatever it is, in what world is that providing any benefit? And,
yeah,
and I've
yeah.
and I've had a learning process with this before,
Mm,
where maybe I did work with a little bit too much pressure. And thank God for clients who are able to kind of correct me and tell me where I fell short as a practitioner.
mm,
Not all supposed to be like perfect practitioners right out of the gate, but it's a very simple thing that I do at the beginning of my sessions is I always try and put the power in their hands. I
mm,
say, let me know at any point if you want more or less pressure. Let me know if you want me to spend more time somewhere. Let me know if you want me to go over something again. Like this is a very common thing in kind of any therapeutic relationship, this principle of power dynamics, right? Where this person usually views you as the authority and they might be scared to ask for what they want. And yeah, I think that's like one of the worst possible states you can be in when you have someone working in your body. Like if something doesn't feel right, or if you want to kind of inform them on how you can improve the session, you should feel safe to ask for
mm.
that change.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that also lends itself both to professionals, but also like friends and family. Like feedback is always valid. And actually, in my experience, it's never bad to communicate most of the time. It's
Yeah.
always on the person receiving that
Mm,
can either deal with it well or not so well, if that makes sense. As
for
long as you
sure.
say honestly, oh, that hurts. Can you not, release the pressure? It's then on you as the practitioner or the friend or the person doing the rolfing or the body work to take it on and be like, yeah, no worries, rather than be kind of weird about it and be like, oh, but I'm doing it right. This is what I learned. This is how I would normally do it. It gets sticky after this, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I have so many qualms with, I mean, and it just runs rampant, and not just in bodywork, but across so many different wellness industries where the practitioner or the person offering the service, like, they just think that they know better than everyone else, including the person that they're working on. And,
Mm,
I'm in the process of actually getting my bodywork method, One Soma Bodywork, approved as its own method that people can take a continuing education course in. That's kind of like the first
cool.
iteration. Who knows where it'll go? But kind of veering away from using the name Rolfing, and instead
Mm,
being like this is One Soma Bodywork. This is what it is. And I taught a workshop a few days ago, and it was kind of like I would just have this conversation with someone who is interested in learning from me in that way, like as a practitioner. And it's almost this funny kind of internal shift that I've had where there's so many other people who have their methods and this is their way. And I
mm,
guess there's almost been a little bit of fear in like reclaiming my own version of that. Like my own
yeah,
version of that is like, no, you're above no client. Your client gets to co-create a session with you. Yes, you have the skills, but you are also like, but the most important thing about this session is how the client is feeling.
yeah, yeah.
And I've like, and this
Which
is
is a
intuitive,
skill.
which is a skill. It's really a skill
Mm,
learning how to listen. And I think people would be very surprised to see how I am with my clients during a session, because I have a bottom up approach to body work where
mm,
my client and their experience is shaping the session. I'm not pulling from some huge repertoire of whatever the fuck. And like, I'm like, this is the plan and this is what we're doing. Like, there's this one session with this woman who had just given birth. I spent the entire hour in her left glute. And
mm.
because we would be in a spot, and she's like, "Oh my god, it's a little bit this way," and I would like, I'm a massage robot. She's holding the remote, and I'm like, moving and moving down, and like trying to pinpoint it. I'm like, "How's that
That's
angle?
great.
How's that angle?" like, like sometimes people come in as novices of their own body and their own pain, and they don't really understand what's happening. But most people that I work with have a very deep understanding. Like they know that little shoulder gremlin that lives here, and they know it. And so why
Yeah,
not participate in helping me find it?
find it.
Like
Yeah,
I already
100%.
know, that there's going to be a lot of body workers and a lot of different philosophies that do not agree with this. There's a lot of
Mm,
philosophies that believe, oh, where you feel the pain is actually coming from restriction somewhere else. It's always more complex. And I just got to say, in my personal experience in helping like thousands of people out of pain, sometimes it's not that complex. Sometimes
yeah.
you need to hold sustained focused pressure in one area, whether it's relieving the tight fascia or it's inputting a new sensation into the nervous system, whatever it is, doesn't really matter what
Yeah,
it is. All it matters is that person is out of pain. And
definitely. And I
yeah.
think it's also important to just allow the person to feel what it feels like to relax away from that hypertension. If it is, like
Mm,
you say, like a chronic feeling, and it's
yeah.
like someone's got an unconscious habit and they're holding a shoulder in a certain way, for example, or their neck,
Yeah.
just having that feedback from someone and an ability to communicate, okay, here's where the gremlin lives, here's what it feels like right now, and then you work with them on that, and then they learn to like breathe and down regulate, and then they're like, oh my god, that's what it feels like to relax my shoulder or relax the trapezius or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
That's a really amazing learning experience where they can partake in. And I think the most powerful methods are the ones that people are active in, and they're not just these passive uh victims for want of a better word, which is the National
Yeah.
Health Service in the UK right now.
No, totally. And I always say this, like I'm joking, also kind of not joking. I don't pick favorite clients, but I have a favorite type of client, and that is someone who is working holistically to solve the issue that they have
Mm,
come to see me for. I have so many clients who are like, I've been the physical therapist, I've been the chiropractor, I've done my own mobility, and I've worked with a personal trainer, whatever it is. And sometimes these chronic issues in our bodies, they're like a sword that's like stuck in the rock, and like they need different angles and different approaches, and sometimes for some reason that one little final wiggle is the thing that sets it free. Not a perfect metaphor,
mm,
but typically I feel like people, I mean, it's psychological and it's also physical. Like, if something's really chronically wrong in your body,
Hmm.
odds are it might take like a little bit more than just one bodywork session and you just never getting off your ass to try and do anything for you. That
100%.
being said, I have had people who I am their first resource and woohoo, like the neck pain is gone after just one session. But for most issues, again, like there's the body worker businesswoman in me, and there's the person who just like really genuinely wants people to feel better. And like I'll work, businesswoman will work on anyone. Come sign up for 100 sessions with me. I don't care. As someone who really, really cares about people getting better, it's like learn to incorporate a more multifaceted approach where you get to do your own stretches and you get to do
Yeah,
what's in your own control to help the issue instead of just paying someone every time when you want to check in with that injury or tension.
definitely.
Or whatever it is.
That's always for me the sign of a really good practitioner. Whenever I go to a therapist, physical therapist, osteopath, chiro, whatever, if it's someone that can meet me where I'm at and be like,
Mm.
here's what I found through my profession and my techniques and my understanding, and here's how you can now work to improve yourself. Rather than being like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm gonna snap, crackle, pop you today and you're fixed because I'm God. It's like,
Yeah.
no, okay, so right, so yeah, you have this, and this issue, and it's, relating from my experience in education here. Um, Here are some things that in a progressive manner you can work on and improve yourself, which is
Mm,
like a clarity of where I'm not doing so well, and a plan to get me from A, where I am right now, and B, where I want to be. And that's where I think almost everyone goes wrong in this field is like, you're not the savior. You're someone that's going to help this person save themselves in a
totally.
roundabout way.
Yeah.
Um, and it sounds like you're on that level, which is amazing. I mean, I knew it anyway, but it's good to hear that you're reaffirming that. I don't want to run out of time, and I want to get to the good stuff. So the kind of
Yeah.
partner based body work, and I think it's
Yeah.
really important. So I'll tell you what I remember, and then you tell me.
Yeah.
Uh, we'll go from there. So one of the best things that you taught me and the group is how the body worker works with the what do you call the person laying down? The victim, the client,
The the receiver, the client, the partner. I
receiver.
know. I always struggle to find the right
Yeah.
word for it.
Let's
Yeah.
say person one is the one that's receiving, and person two is the me or you right now.
Okay.
Person
Let's
two.
do
So well, I'm talking about person two right now. So one of the most important things that person two can do is to meet the level of relaxation or kind of calmness that
Yeah.
person one is trying to get into.
Mm,
And it was almost like a really nice realization of like, if I'm like gurning away and like trying really hard and tensing to get my elbows super deep in them, it's going to rub off on them, and they're going to resonate with the same kind of feeling.
for sure.
Um, and that also was like the hand thing that you told us about, which was awesome. It was like, when I'm focusing on exactly. For those not on the video, we're both looking like absolute weirdos, showing our forearms with a floppy hand. Oh yeah. That's the arm wrestling right now.
Yeah. That's a
the
crazy pump.
yeah. The relaxation of everything that's unnecessary to the the body work is incredibly important because it allows you to
Yes.
kind of stay
Yeah.
relaxed and into that process. And then you kind of worked on like having certain lines of the body that you could follow, which
Mm,
for me just like anatomically made so much sense. It's just like follow certain avenues from each muscle group, or if you don't know that, like just split the body into sections and just kind of talk with your partner. And then I think maybe I've dreamt this up, but you were working like medially to like laterally, like you were going kind of like center of the body out. You were rarely going like into the middle of the body, or is that just a dream?
it depends on what area you're working on. There's no like
Mm,
harsh rule with directionality.
okay.
Um, when you're doing something like lymphatic drainage massage, where you're working with bringing the fluids back into the lymphatic system, that's a slightly
Mm,
different approach. But um, yeah. But maybe
okay.
you just saw techniques that were more oriented that way.
So let's
Um,
go Can
Yeah.
you give us like 3 tips of like if you're working with people like a couple and you want this couple to like work on each other and kind of curate this practice? Because I think it's something that's really exciting for a couple to be like physically engaged and supporting each other, like non-sexually. It's like working with body work to genuinely help this person feel good in their body.
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, my boyfriend's a camera guy. You know, he has his own creative
Mm,
agency. But his elbow, man, his elbow's been trained. You know, he gives me such a good back rub, foot rub, whatever it is that I need. So there is hope if your partner is not great. There is definitely hope. As for 3 tips to just improve any at-home massage, number 1 is just communicate. Like,
mm,
don't just assume where your partner wants massage. Like, as the receiver, tell the giver like what hurts. And there's so many different ways to communicate, right? You can say
mm,
verbal, like I could say upper back, or I could touch my upper back and like kind of poke around in there myself until I find the right area and really identify it. And if I'm on the ground, I'm like, hey babe, it's right there, it's right there. And then they just boom,
mm.
place the elbow or place the thumbs. And so, you know, ask for more or less pressure. Don't just, you know, try and make your partner feel good, like they're giving you a good massage. Like tell them, you know, that doesn't feel great or more pressure. Can you move higher or lower? Like communicate, communicate, communicate. Probably a pretty valuable skill in a relationship with or without body work. Um,
Definitely.
number 2 is work very slowly.
Mm,
So my session, I think I mentioned before, like sorry, not my session. My style of body work. I think I mentioned before that I have spent a whole hour in someone's left glute. I have a couple clients who like 90 minutes in the back. We do 45 minutes up one side, 45
mm,
minutes up the other. And so just work slow. Like you don't need to work over the entire back, over the entire leg. Like you can I think most people's aches and pains and tensions oftentimes concentrate to a few different spots. I call them the epicenters. And if
mm,
you can just have your partner even hold like for 5-10 minutes there, you know, maybe not like 5-10 minutes in one point, but in one localized area. So my boyfriend all the time will work on my lower back and like
mm,
right at the top of the glute, and he's just holding pressure. He's holding
mm.
pressure, moving a little bit, but it's not like it's just not my style of body work. Okay, I'm not talking down on it. It's just not my
Yeah,
style.
yeah.
It's not like moving the tissues around and kneading with your elbow. I think I do think people can get a lot more value from slowing down using sustained, focused pressure.
Mm,
Um, and number 3 is, yeah, kind of what you were saying before, work efficiently. So it's kind of a general rule of thumb, but always when you are giving body work, you want to look for your own body positioning that is the most comfortable. Like it was crazy to me at the Rolf Institute to have someone working on me and I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel quite right. And then the teacher comes around and adjusts their body mechanics to make them more comfortable. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, it feels
mm.
amazing. And so I mean, one way that yeah, it's so funny. You look at my Instagram and it's just like all little photos of like me with my elbow and someone. But I do really think the elbow is an amazing, like very easy tool to use. You just kind of lean your body weight over a little bit,
Yeah, yeah.
add some pressure. You know, you want to work at that elbow point in most cases or like the elbow hook. And yeah, you want to make body work easy. You want to make getting body work easy for yourself and for your
Mm.
partner. So they can't use that excuse that their hands hurt or whatever.
Right. I think
Yeah.
that's a golden tip of like not focusing on like fingers and thumbs and hands and palms. Like they can be,
Yeah,
I think you call them like accurate tools or like more fine-tuned tools. And they're valid for like certain areas of like the face, for example. You would
for
never put like
sure.
your elbow in someone's face. But for most people, like as you call the epicenters, it's likely an elbow does the trick, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, no elbows to the jaw, the massive. Um, you know, in very few cases, I use the elbow in someone's neck. Usually, if it's like my NFL player client who's massive. But yeah, I mean,
Mm,
the hands and fingers do come in handy, no pun intended. Like the little muscles around the neck, or you know, the jaw, or even like some
mm,
scalp stuff. The feet. Although I'm
mm.
pretty. I oftentimes give an elbow to the feet. But yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I feel you there. Um, what are the epicenters?
Okay. Love this question. Um, I think that we have universal epicenters. I have really never explored trigger point therapy, but I do think that it's probably a similar concept. Like there are some universal areas in the body where all humans are tight. Like I
Mm,
could literally, oftentimes people are like, "What's going on there? Like, wait, do you feel something weird?" I'm like, "Bro, I'm sorry, but everyone has this epicenter, this trigger point." Like,
mm,
I mean, one that we can all feel right now is like right here in the hand, kind of between the
mm.
the thumb, the thumb and
And
index
index.
finger.
Yeah.
Um, Another one is like right in here in the extensors, right by the elbow. Um,
Mm,
Probably the most common one that I work with, which is funny because I have never had tension in my traps or upper back at all, but is up here in the traps.
yeah, I get that.
Um, yeah, like right at the top there. The suboccipitals, so the muscles right underneath the skull
Mm,
get taught a lot of people. I mean, but they're kind of everywhere. Like we have ones in the medial arch and the lower back and
mm,
different areas of the hamstring. Like those are kind of the more universal ones, but I definitely do think that for whatever reason, people's epicenters speak different volumes, you know?
mm.
Um, like I've literally never had tension in my upper back a day in my life. But my lower
Wow.
back, she speaks to me all the time. And
Mm.
then of course you have the people who have both. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
typically like my lower back and suboccipitals, like right at the top of my neck, are my most prominent ones, but it really just depends on the person. And every once in a while you get a really weird epicenter. You're like, all right, let's
Yeah,
do it.
let's dig in.
Let's
I
dig
love
in.
the way you say she's speaking to me. It's almost like you're personifying the pain, I guess. Is
I
that a
definitely
conscious effort?
I think it's a little endearing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean a lot of different aspects. Again, we're like I will not go too far into this left field, but sometimes it is helpful to like look at these little aching parts of us, whether it's like an injury or an emotional part of us, as like almost a different person, right? Or like a
Mm,
like a like something that needs its own care, like it's a hurting person. Like if you saw a hurting person in front of you of whatever variety for whatever reason, like I feel like most sane humans have a caretaker that's ready to come out.
mm.
Um and sometimes it's helpful to do that with ourselves, I think.
That's great. I love it.
But yeah,
Yeah, I think personifying or objectifying things can be really valuable. I know it's a really big
yeah.
practice in fear, like dealing with fear and like really
Mm,
trying to objectify something so you can see it and work on it rather than it
yeah,
just being an unknown, something that's kind of unconsciously stressful.
for
And I feel
sure.
like that makes so much sense also in tension and how like the relationship of stress and tension is obviously super interlinked. So I'm sure fear response, stress response, all plays into
Yeah,
tensions, conscious and unconscious. So yeah, I really like that practice
definitely.
actually. I'm going to use that for
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah,
He's
right?
kicking up again. That's great.
Exactly.
Isa, I'm aware that I've taken so much of your morning, so I want to try and round this out. I want to know if you have any like general advice, and I want to talk first of all and go back to your practice because I think it's a really interesting one, and I'm really happy to hear that you've kind of found your thing right now.
Mm,
Um, do you have any tips for people in finding their thing, like in finding something that resonates? Like, what was the process that you went
mm.
through to find your thing?
Movement wise,
In your practice, physicality.
physicality. I think. Oh wow, this is a really good question. I think being like hedonism obviously gets a very bad rap. I do think, however, there's a lot of value in letting your pursuit being driven, and letting your pursuit be driven by what feels good and
Mm,
what you like, and not in this hedonistic way, but like I'm talking about flow state and feeling good after a workout and loving how you see yourself in a mirror. Like it's hedonistic in the sense that it's being driven by pleasure, but it's very deep pleasure. And
mm,
so in everything that I have discovered over my movement journey, which first started at volleyball. Dude, like the deepest flow states that I've ever experienced in my life were from playing volleyball. I'm
Mm,
kind of still hoping that I eventually find something that brings me to that state again. I can honestly say that I have not quite yet, but I was just obsessed with it. And I was just obsessed with the experience of the body that it gave me. And with handstands, I don't know why I enjoy the sensation of standing on two and now one hands, but I love it. And when I'm balancing on one arm, I feel like I'm levitating there for like an eternity. Um, I, I don't do it as much, but like I really love dancing. I love like exploring waving and just musicality and rhythm. And that's another thing that I have just been like, I don't really know why I want to do this, but I just feel good when I explore dancing. And you know, with the kind of weightlifting that I do, I feel amazing after a session. And I've learned to kind of organize my training sessions to a way that I feel good. Like I have done personal training sessions over the last couple of years with pro bodybuilders. And personally, I do not like how intensely they push me. I still push myself hard. I'm not pushing myself as hard as like, an elite pro bodybuilder.
mm,
Um, but yeah, and I also think that it's okay to explore and realize that you don't like something. Like I went through a period of doing some Muay Thai classes and I was like, this is cool, but it's not my speed. I went through a period of getting like obsessive with locomotion and acrobatics and I like some aspects of that, but not my speed right now.
mm,
And yeah, I mean, it's also helpful. I think one limiting factor for people starting anything new along their fitness journey is that their current community does not support that. And so I
mm.
think a hugely important element about exploring new things and wanting to kind of move your life into, orienting around movement or whatever it is like you need to be surrounded by the right people. I think a lot of, people maybe be into like partying and whatever stuff that's not necessarily good for your health and for your body and maybe a limiting factor is that they don't want to disappoint those people in their lives. And so if you can find a community like, like what you created in London and multiple different areas of the world, but when you can be surrounded by people who understand your pursuits and they can kind of help shape your pursuits, I think that's a really good state to be in.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, oh, and also empower you to drop something if it doesn't suit you, like
Yeah.
allow you to
And
change.
a lot, yeah, man. I mean, this is something that I'm kind of still exploring in myself. Like, why do I feel these needs to stick with something or I mean with someone in different cases like even though I know it's not good for me and maybe a lot of us struggle with that. I don't know if I'm kind of higher on that spectrum than others, but I've definitely let that keep me in practices and in relationship with people longer than I should and I'm really working on that and have
Yeah,
been working on it for a while, but
I
it's
feel you there.
totally okay to change. Yeah.
100%. And that's an amazing ending. It is totally okay to change.
Yes.
Isa, thank
Thank
you
God we can
so,
change.
so much. That was amazing. I really enjoyed that. I want to give people at home a chance to know where they can find your work. What are the best methods?
Yes. So my Instagram at one.soma is a nifty little business card. You can see what my sessions look like. I have another account as well. It's called at isabel.moves. Sharing a
Mm,
little bit more like movement, somatic stuff on that page. And you can learn more about my bodywork sessions and workshops at my website, onesoma.co. And that'll give you all the links to workshops, contact, everything.
awesome.